Good afternoon, guys. It is hot, it is sticky, it is sleepy. I'm glad you guys came back after lunch. I really enjoyed Mark's talk right before. It's super rare to get so deep into hardware, into all these conspiracy theories about what could go wrong in your computing stack. On this panel, we're going to go more conspiracy theories. A lot of you work on, this event is about privacy. I know a lot of you work on things like ZK, FHE. Phoenix is one of the sponsors, I can see, MPC, etc. But it's easy to really tunnel vision into this one particular tool or hammer that you're using. On this panel, we have a pretty broad swath of people where my main goal is to help you understand the threats that you should be thinking of holistically as you design your full stack systems. And the mission for us is to make sure that you do tie up your stacks as far as possible so that we can avoid AI totalitarianism. That's what some of us on this panel worry about as AI takes over the world and possibly takes over our abilities to choose how we engage with the world. Shall we do a round of introductions? Zaki, you want to start this time?
Yeah. My name is Zaki. I work with Sudo on Sovright.
Yeah, Mark Davis, CEO of Crossbar. I just spoke.
I'm David. I've said it too many times. Secure software supply chain engineer and one co-founder of Poetic Technologies.
Jan, I run a cybersecurity company called Oak Security, and I'm the co-founder of BREW Privacy Solution.
It's an institutional privacy system.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm Sudo. I work on Sovright, formerly known as Electric Coin Company, original makers of ZK Snarks, and we really care about people having the right to choose how they behave in the world and what people can see, how people can control or not what they do. Okay, today on many of my panels, I like to have a narrative. Today we're like goats. We're just gonna snack. We're gonna snack on little pieces of information. And hopefully some of this helps you guys think about your own stacks. I want to start with, okay, here's a good way to start. Mark just delivered a 30-minute presentation on verifiable silicon. The question I want to ask Mark is, you sound very paranoid. You spent like 20, 30 minutes talking about how you go all the way to your GDS files, your little analog circuits, but I guess two questions here. Are you too paranoid? Like, what has actually gone wrong in the past for you to care about these things? And then the second question is, when you go and try and sell this to people, how do they resist your paranoia?
Okay, so the first one, I think one of the best examples that maybe can resonate with everybody here is something you brought up, I think, in your talk a couple days ago. All these Intel network processors have this IME. It's kind of like a secondary engine with its own connection that can, is nominally for IT. AMD has a similar thing, PSP. So not only is that odd, it's closed source. They really resist disabling it. Like there's this whole battle between this, ME cleaned effort and Intel trying to stop people from disabling it. And there have been exploits. I think there's a CVE from 2017 about this, an exploit where this IME can basically disable the entire security model of the chip. So imagine you're running a smart contract. You would never run a smart contract you couldn't audit, you couldn't see, and yet you run it on hardware that you can't see, that has secret components that are really a backdoor that you can't disable and can't audit, you can't see the source.
Can I do a quick poll of who here builds on Intel, TDX, SGX?
Well, I would say everybody if you're running on the network side, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think when you go to like cloud services, you're running on hardware that comes from
Yeah.
AMD, Intel, et cetera.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Can you repeat what Davey said?
Yeah, and then you said how our how.
Yeah, I just want to say that IME, Intel Management Subsystem,
And IME is the Intel Management Engine.
Yeah, and it's not only in TEs, it's like in every single consumer computer.
No, what I meant is just because you're not running on your desktop doesn't mean you're not on Intel. If you're in the cloud, you are on a chip that came from one of these companies, right? So, and then how do people react? I think a lot of people just, it's like if you're cleaning something and you pick up a board and you see a bunch of cockroaches, it's tempting to just drop the board and say, I'm going to ignore that. I'll work on something else, right? A lot of people react that way. It's just
Okay.
like, oh, that's interesting. That's messy. It's too hard.
Can I maybe ask Zaki to talk about, I mean, he's been working on a blockchain for a really long time. He's worked with TEs, et cetera. Can you talk about like why these people here who are crypto or crypto adjacent should care about it?
So ultimately, I think that the question has been, it's like, how is power exercised in the world of computing? So like the governments have wanted to regulate computation for, since the, since the 80s. I don't know, Ronald Reagan saw war games and, that sort of set off this it's a true story. Like he literally saw war games. It was like, we need to figure out how to regulate computation. It was like, and like we've just been on a
What is this war games?
There's a movie from the 80s about a hacker taking over NORAD and almost starting a nuclear war. And so Ronald Reagan watched this movie in the White House theater and then immediately was like, what do we do about this? And like the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act is immediately downstream of watching the movie. So, weird things have consequences. Another sort of like really big thing that happened is that sort of after 9/11, the governments were not widely engaged in sort of exploit development prior to the sort of post 9/11 NSA, but Dick Cheney took the restraints off and government malware became a thing. But so like our question has always been, when does the mechanism of control move from the network, so like mass surveillance, like tapping the network and backdoors and malware, to just wanting to regulate every piece of hardware on the planet? And that's the paranoid fantasy. And I think we sort of are starting to see the outlines of what is like the forcing function of wanting to do this, which is LLM weights and the capabilities that are in LLMs being so powerful that the government wants an extreme amount of control. And there's going to be like a big battle about open weight models, I think, coming, and your ability to run inference on hardware that you control. And so this is why we should care.
Can you draw a straight line between what you're talking about and AI totalitarianism? And let me just define an LLM-generated definition. So AI totalitarianism is when the machines you depend on every day answer to somebody other than you, and you don't know, you can't check, and you can't opt out. And the problem is every dictatorship before had a hard constraint of having a finite amount of people to watch you. But this is obviously less and less true every day.
Yeah, so I think that it is within the realm of technical capability to embed the watcher in your machine, and to embed an agent that isn't your agent, that is the government's agent in your computer, that will silently and invisibly make sure that you don't prompt the wrong things.
Okay, I want to move on to Davey. Davey is the person I ask if I want to be extra paranoid about any of my hardware and software stack, and I really respect him for being such a source, like a ground truth on whether something is safe to use or not. Can you talk about supply chain attacks?
Yeah, it is a topic that surprisingly, not surprisingly, becoming more and more talked about in the space, and I've been researching and looking into this for a long time, and I have never seen this amount of interest. But the software supply chain security was broken all along. It is really not the common practice to do the secure distribution of software. And
do people here understand what software supply chain is?
I can
Show of
explain.
hands. Okay, so not a small percentage of the room raise their hand. Can you explain that?
Yeah, which is very strange because I have to tell developers that we don't run source code, we run binaries. How do you know that a binary is what you think?
Can you explain what the difference is?
You don't run source code. Any program you run is a binary that has been compiled. And the fact that the binary has been generated from the source code doesn't mean anything. Nobody proved that.
Do people understand what that means? Yes? Yes? Okay, some people don't understand. I'm going to explain it, and feel free to re-explain it for me. So you go to GitHub, and you kind of see all this code, and you're like, oh, it's open source, it's great. People have looked at it, it's safe, everybody runs this. But actually, for most normal human beings, what actually happens is they go to a website and they download the .dmg, the .exe, and you run that. And for many of these pieces of software, you're not actually able to tie the code you see on GitHub to this binary that you just installed.
Yeah, but also it's now also like if you think about servers, the process of distribution of the artifacts that's going to be running on the machine is all fully automated. And you have to, and it's further complicated by the fact that to run absolutely anything, like a Hello World app that just outputs Hello World, you need the closure, meaning the entirety of the infrastructure, like underlying stack that needs to be there for you to compile and run it, or just run it, is 700 megs of different packages. So you have to download thousands and thousands of packages, and everything's super hyper connected, and nobody really takes care of that.
What are some recent examples where this is a problem? Because it does sound like, I don't know, it's been working fine for 2 decades. Like, why is it now a problem?
No, it didn't work fine. It was always broken, and now it's became more and more broken.
How? Like, what's happened recently?
I mean, like one of the, I mean, you mentioned this Arch Linux attack, but this is like a classic attack where that not on an insecure package index that is run by a community, and it also was exploiting npm package. So it's not a good example for very severe supply chain attacks, but like one of the more severe supply chain attack is XZ compressor supply chain attack. There was a targeted attack on basically like a classic figure of a random guy in Nebraska who was like for free maintaining a really important piece of software. This way, but in this case it was a person in Finland, and through that, just by chance, we almost introduced an attack to, like the attackers also almost introduced a vulnerability to majority of currently running Linux servers. And that attack was targeting SSH, so secure shell.
If I remember correctly, this was about a year or so ago, a year and a half. And what happened was some person decided to help out this maintainer 8 years before. So it was a very long-running attack, gained their trust. And at some point, I don't know when, inserted insecure code, basically malware.
That was merged into Fedora package repository, and only then rolled back because of the a random person again saw that there is a delay in communication between one piece of software and the other piece of software, and they realized that like something is off, and they researched it for a week and they realized that there is a malware.
Right. So something happened recently, around June 11th. there's a flavor of Linux called Arch Linux, and attackers basically took over 400 packages in something like 22 minutes, simply by going through a process of gaining access to abandoned repositories. So anybody who downloaded any of these hundreds of packages within the exploit period would have essentially just automatically downloaded malware to their devices. This is the kind of tragedy of supply chain vulnerabilities today, and this is expected to get worse over time as AI gets more and more complex. I want to move on to Jan. We've talked a lot about hardware, we talk about supply chain attacks, we talk about issues with TEs, et cetera. Can you talk to us about things that are more kind of on the business side, how you think about these vulnerabilities, how to think holistically about how to protect your assets and your clients' assets?
So one thing that comes to my mind is that at Oak Security, like, we talk a lot about code, and also I think in Web3 we are really used to emphasize on audits, right? You want your code to be secure, but then what the attackers do is, and like 51% of all losses are attributable to this, is like they exploit the human vector. So, and actually, you know, having a hygiene of cybersecurity practices and operational security practice is much easier to implement yourself, and is also much cheaper to buy consulting on than basically, for example, formally verifying your code or doing a moonshot project like completely secure, unbreakable hardware, right? But what we see is most people don't like that. I think that's the same, like most people don't like, you know, going to the gym and working out consistently, because you have to protect yourself every day and keeping your guard up. And the problem is, especially when we talk about totalitarian systems, like in the end, the technology will be against us. So the only thing that we have is our behavior. And I think that what you said was great. You know, you lift the floor a little bit, and then like you see that there's cockroaches, and you don't want to deal with them, like, and we have to break out of that loop as a community, and also like once we've broken out, we have to embrace that same logic for our businesses. But first of all, like the first thing is like a mind shift that we need to make.
What is this? Can you summarize what the mindset should be?
Well, I think like I'm very glad to be on a panel with very paranoid people, and I think that's the thing that we need. We need paranoia, and it's not always easy. Especially, I think it's not easy for crypto builders in the bear market, because you know you need to be profitable. Best case tomorrow, your VCs are making pressure. Like everybody is like pushing you to push the product, but then you will make sacrifices. Maybe you sleep less. Maybe it's okay to have your password stored as an end variable. Things like that. But if you want to be secure, then you need to move slow and protect yourself at all times.
Thank you. I would like to move back to Zaki. You have built a number of blockchains. Can you talk about, like, you know, we know how the transparent one works. We're getting better at how the less transparent one works. Can you talk about, you know, what other people can observe or do to some of these blockchain networks that are less obvious? You know, you can talk about metadata or, you know, the actual distribution of validators, et cetera. Things that make the system more resilient.
Well, okay. I think that there's like the sort of most interesting questions like go back to this sort of like, okay, like what do we really do? And the level of paranoia in the industry, I think, has been kind of reduced because of a lot of exploit vectors have really, no one has really ever pulled the trigger on them. But like, for instance, like all of the Hyperliquid hardware runs in like, on a single cloud provider in a single data center. It does seem like there's like a lot of levers of control that are not just like go after legally the Hyperliquid Foundation if you really wanted to. And so like one of the things that we have, like, I think like one of the things that we've always struggled with is like, what are the levers of control that we leave open in the system? And how transparent are we to the users of the system about what the real levers of control are? And this used to be a thing that in crypto was discussed a lot, and I think has become much less discussed, like what are the levers of control? And so now I think we're a lot less clear on what are the underlying properties of the systems that we build. So I think that's like one answer to this question. And so like the system that like, I mean, I think like what we've like long talked about is this idea is the system that you get through like whatever website you visit or is sort of not really the system. That is just like one view into the system, but the system that like everyone is like the thing that most people believe in is that like, oh, like I click this button, this transaction happens, but there is this like vast, there is a lot of complexity that lives underneath it, and that illusion of the pushing buttons on websites making things happen being the real system is a fragile illusion, and it's an illusion that can break under a variety of different circumstances. And so like the whole work of building blockchains has been trying to actually make that illusion real, but it's always been fragile.
Can you give specific examples? These sound fascinating and also kind of scary.
So I mean, it's like the first, the like classic example is like, is the money yours? Like what are all the intermediaries between you and your ability to execute a transaction? Where are all the places where that transaction can be reshaped, redefined, nullified? Who are all the people who can prevent you from accessing, moving your funds, interacting with an app? All of those things. Those are the vulnerabilities.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe just one comment about is this paranoid? A lot of you maybe remember just I think back to the 2022 event where Hetzner, was it, they decided they would disallow proof of stake, and like 1,000 Solana nodes went offline overnight. So once you have this capital intensive business, it's inherently centralized in that, it's not just hardware backdoors, it's the business control is important.
Okay. I want to open it up to the floor. Are there any kind of, am I too paranoid? Am I not enough paranoid questions that you have? Or maybe you have a contribution for something we haven't discussed that you think other people should pay attention to?
The challenge I always have is in building a system, being somewhat paranoid, what is the level, how far down do I go to make a practical, and I hate using that word, to make a commercially viable system or a system that can be maintained over the long term, that kind of finding that balance is always a challenge. And so it's more of a comment and to see how the four of you would kind of respond to that, your views on that.
I think there is no balance. Security of every system is as weak as its weakest link. So, and to reflect on some of the comments that have been made, I do agree that we need to have a different behavioral relation to technology, and I also do agree that majority of secure products or whatnot is any security product is basically wants to show you a green check mark on a screen, but how do you know whether this green check mark means anything? We have to, as users or anybody who engages with technology, need to prove to ourselves that we either rely on people who know what they're doing, and it has been shown they don't know, or we have to somehow prove it to ourselves. Because every single security, product usually breaks after asking question how 5 times.
Yeah, maybe one thought that I have is like, how would this event look like in a AI totalitarian world, right? So we have cameras pointed at us. We are on a panel. We have like 1,000 devices in the room. Would this still be the same? I guess not. And how would it be different? Like, would we go off grid? Will we use new kind of privacy preserving technologies? And if yes, how can we make sure that those things really behave in the way that we want them to behave? And I think the solution is, again, learn as much as you can about the technology, be able to verify the technology that you're using, and maybe even compile it yourself. But the worst case is that like things like that just can't happen anymore because there's too much technology around us, right? I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? How would this look like?
So I guess my thought on I think what you imagine. So I would describe what you're imagining is like the civilian version of like what it is to be on the front lines in Ukraine right now. Basically, everything is observed. Everything gets fed into an AI system. Everything is constantly being targeted, decided, all of this stuff. And could the entire world look like that? I think it's entirely possible.
Well, maybe I'm interpreting. I thought the gist of the question is along the lines of, you can be paranoid, you can try to do everything in the open, but at the end of the day, you have to build something. And you are inherently then dependent on supply chain of high-tech things. I had a long talk with Bunny last night about it, saying, well, for example, 2 nanometer, something like this is inherently very expensive. It's going to be centralized. So somehow it doesn't seem the right answer to me that like advanced semiconductor process shouldn't exist. I don't think that's better. So it's complicated, but I think that his answer kind of, which I thought was good, is that, yeah, you inherently are going to have to depend on centralized systems of some sort in your daily life, but at least if you can have a choice of taking your data and backing out and opting into another system, maybe we focus on that.
It sounds like the missing seat on this stage and a missing organization that needs to exist is or are those that advocate for the ability to have a say in where these cameras, where these systems are deployed, and how verifiable we want things to be, how transparent we want the things we're clicking on to be. It sounds like individuals being paranoid is not enough. We need more of a social movement.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and I think like we have the chance to become those. Like as we are here, we can form these kind of organizations, and we can make sure that the technology around us is built according to our standards. We have the ability here because we are not yet in a totalitarian system, and I think that's what gives me personally hope. And I think also what you said is so correct, because like in the end, like this is like the absolute disaster scenario, and we have to also plan for the like happy path scenario. And that, I think, there the obvious solution is, yeah, build centralized businesses, make some money.
Yeah, maybe I think of when OpenAI had this meeting about how they're going to support the U.S. government, and then Anthropic said no, and so many people canceled their ChatGPT and went over to Claude that week. So if there's something about requirement to disclose what big and centralized entities are doing, and your ability to then react to that commercially, maybe that's a more practical step than everything being open and verified by the end user.
Okay, we're about at time. I want to end. Do you want to contribute?
Yeah, I think we as a community are much more capital efficient than large corporations. we can utilize our intellect better than inefficient big entities. And this is where I wish people would like work on more horizontal coordination and cross learning from each other.
Okay, I want to end with each of us contributing our idea to a question. It is an atypical way, I think, to end a panel. It is a depressing question. Let's say you fast forward 5 years and AI totalitarianism has happened. We now live in this world. What would you regret not having done? I can start so you have time to think. I think what I would regret is not fighting the ubiquity of CCTVs that are deployed everywhere, and the people who host them are completely unaccountable. I don't know how long the data lasts for. I don't know what like biometric scanning they're doing. I think I will regret not fighting that more.
Maybe for me it's not working on verifiable software and not buying a sailboat.
I mean, at that point, I would regret I don't know how to grow food.
Wow, that's a good question, actually. Maybe a more personal answer is, I'm an old man, so maybe I'll be gone before this comes to fruition. I really worry about my children. And I think, my daily life, I get pressured by, I'm trying to run a business. And I would regret not having thought of the consequences of that near-term focus. Oh, we got to make money, we got to do this, that. When this overarching cloud is threatening us all.
I think where the anti-surveillance movement basically found itself not having any answers over the last 10 years is what to do about commercial surveillance, like surveillance as a product. So we sort of made progress with this idea that like we should stop governments from surveilling us and governments from having cameras everywhere, et cetera. But then we had no answer to when there were just commercial pressure to have cameras everywhere and surveillance everywhere, and then the data is just available to be purchased. And we've had no philosophy about this, and this probably is what doomed us.
You're saying the efforts to fight that have not been enough?
The efforts of that have been effectively non-existent.
Why do you think that is?
Because we don't have a philosophy about it. Someone owns this building. They're like, we want to set up cameras because we want to, prevent crime, prevent people from abusing it, being able to attribute what happened in this space. And then we're like, great, okay, so yeah, that's their property. They have the right to set up cameras there. That's logical. And then whoever, there's a supply chain of taking that data and selling it to people because they're like, well, I paid for putting all these cameras here, and now someone's willing to give me money for like what the data that's in the cameras. So like, why wouldn't I take that money? We don't have any solution to that. And the government's like, well, okay, so there's like this data is now freely available to purchase. Like, why can't we buy it?
Wait, are you saying commercial enterprises do this? Like, I go to the cafe and then suddenly my data is out there?
Oh, absolutely.
But what for like LLMs to train on, or like
Someone's
what?
willing to buy it. It doesn't matter.
But who?
FBI, yeah, the local police agents, the local police, all this stuff. But then advertising, marketing, like.
Wow.
Oh, you think this is just the world?
One thing I like about Berlin is that there are much fewer cameras than a lot of the cities I've been in, but it's kind of like one of the few places in the world.
And it's like, it's like people have cameras on their doorbells. People have cameras on their, on their balconies. Like all for like very good reasons. Like you want all of this stuff, and then you want the like convenient cloud features and all of these things. But this is what happens.
Resist.
But like more or less, it's over. Like it's over.
All right. Well, we're at time. I'm told we should go on for more. I am enjoying this. Why don't we flip the question? We staved off AI totalitarianism. What do you think you did to contribute to this? And it can't be just the reverse of what you said you failed at.
Okay, what did I do? Private internet money?
Yes.
I saw a talk yesterday where the speaker talked about responsibility shifting. I thought that was an interesting term, meaning you get all this complex warning, and people just click through it without reading it. Well, I came from cellular 20 years ago. Everybody thought it was fundamentally impossible to crowdsource location and AP node names, that this just would never fly. Well, it turns out if you say, do you want location, or we're going to remove it, or you have to opt in, people are lazy. So I think being responsible rather than responsibility shifting to people who really are just, that's not solving the problem. People are going to click through it and enslave themselves very easily.
I'm gonna do the opposite of what Zaki said. I would stop using money.
Can you talk louder?
I would stop using money.
You would stop using money. Okay. What would you use?
I mean, we can organize without money. The best things are done without money.
So we would trade our skills.
Yeah, we will help each other.
We will capture.
Help.
We would help each other.
Yeah.
I think really building communities that care about operational security and are paranoid. Building paranoid communities is really like the base layer of a working society that doesn't live on surveillance tech.
I have an answer, but I wanted to go back to Zaki. Like, he just said private internet money. Why is that so important to AI totalitarianism?
Well, okay, so like all of your meat space is surveilled. Like maybe we can hold the line on like messaging privacy, maybe.
Not in the UK.
Yeah, but maybe we have some shot at doing that. Thank you, Moxie. But like, I guess the proposal that we like create an alternate economy seems unlikely to work. Money has been the most scalable coordination mechanism that humans have come up with. So it seems like we need that. Like that, but outside of the AI surveillance world to like have some notion of liberty.
Does it have to be the entire world transacts in only private money?
No. It seems unlikely. It simply means that like some exit exists.
Okay, so like for certain things or over certain cycles, you kind of regain some privacy. Can you talk about maybe how this leans into AI agents, bots using tokens? Do we need privacy there, or do we not want bots to have any financial privacy?
Well, mostly what you want is you want bots that answer to you and only you. And if we don't have bots that answer to us and only us, or like your individual notion of it, and so then you have to imagine like what are all the levers that have to exist in order to have an AI that actually works for you and isn't working for someone else. And right now we are very much enjoying the empowerment that comes from the AIs that don't really necessarily work for us, but are very useful. But it seems like it's going to be a problem soon.
I would just add also, I think we could be thoughtful about how much compute takes place network-centric versus client-centric. On the client side, you would have more heterogeneous device types that more open source. So that's a place where we can make technical progress in architecture that is more privacy preserving.
Right. Okay. I guess are we allowed to end soon? Okay. I have a final contribution, which is a tension that has been surfaced on this panel, which is to be more private, you also just being very factual about it, you do lose some ability to secure. You could say privacy is security. At the same time, sometimes privacy is less security. And I think the reason that right now we're moving towards protect the children, security is everything, is that the people who are responsible for your security are in there for a job for a few years. They're not responsible for the gradual erosion of individual privacy over, say, 10 to 20 years. And so the incentives are very misaligned. And the way people think about how to prioritize between these two good values is not clear. And I feel like it's a problem I've been thinking about and stressed out about. I guess my contribution to this space, if I were to plan out over multiple years, is try and help people understand how to make this trade-off in ways that feel good for whichever local community they are organizing for. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.